Hey, everybody, welcome to the Approved Perspective podcast powered by Approved Social. And, today we're obviously going to talk more than just music, but although I love music, it's a passion of mine. So I totally get man, we could probably sit down and just talk about that all day. But
I love it.
I do want to talk to you about your experience in a couple of things. So one, I saw that you're an email marketing expert. You've been doing you've done massive email stuff,
Yes.
which I think is a really cool thing that we should definitely engage upon. Because, there's so many businesses today that I talk to constantly as an agency owner and founder, and then also as a SaaS founder, that just aren't using emails effectively. Maybe they even have an email list and they just literally have not been using them. So I think that's something that I know a lot of our listeners would definitely love to chat through with you here. But you've also done a lot in CRM consulting, which is big. You've done omni-channel engagement. You've got a lot of different things that you have as expertise. And so I just thought it would be a good idea to warm up the audience a little bit, tell them a little bit about yourself, what your sort of journey has been to get into the digital marketing world and everything that you've done up to this point.
So thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Hey, absolutely. It's fun.
I started my career at a very interesting time because as I was developing professionally, so was the technology. I mean, obviously it's always developing and stuff, but I'm talking about by leaps and bounds. Like I started, there was no Google. Now there's Google, like that level of, development. And
that is crazy.
What that gave me though was a really, I think, strong window into the people side of all of this. And the fundamental flaws that I see almost always come back to the same basic premise, which is the same people that were responsible for offline media were responsible for the development of online media, and not their fault necessarily, but they applied what they knew and tried to make it work. So everything from ad placement and ads. Forget about the fact they don't work. Let's do ads. That kind of a thing. And so I decided that I really wanted to expand my skill set to ensure that as I was focusing on a lot of these marketing initiatives, I always understood the tech behind them, and I always understood what makes them sing. And I can't tell you how rewarding that has been for me, because every single time a developer has said, I can't do that, I've said, yes, you can. Here's how. I might not be able to sit down and programmatically do it, but I know it's feasible. And that's all the result, I think, of my quote unquote upbringing, the way that I kind of navigated it all.
Very cool. I love it. And so your current business is Labrador. And what's the URL of that?
So it's LabradorConnect.com. I'm actually still trying to develop or finish the site. I've had no time to do the site because I'm busy working.
I get it. You're booked on podcasts. I mean, you're promoting it. Yeah, I mean, that's cool. So currently, like a splash page or landing page, I'm sure if you go there, you can probably put an email address in and get some information. But tell us a little bit about what your priorities are with Labrador Consulting, and what are you doing there for folks?
What I really do, and it sounds like, as my grandmother would say, a shticky line, but it's not. It's an actual real focus and belief of mine that there are too many consultants out there trying to solve problems. I focus on preventing them from ever occurring. And so what that really means is that I actually don't see myself much on the revenue side. I see myself on the cost side, saving costs by dramatically increasing efficiencies, operations, training, making sure that companies are able to, kind of outpace that 20% of adoption rates that Gartner tells us of any given MarTech platform's tool set, eliminate redundancies and things. And so I've been working with smaller clients, but looking to get with bigger clients, because the process that I've come up with and that I've been focused on is really something that I think needs to come before a person saying, oh, let's go add this next tool, or let's add this next thing. You might not need to.
It's interesting because it's like a cost saving, yes, but you can also sort of equate it to revenue generation if you are going to look down the road. Of course, you're talking about even like Approved Social, the tool that we have. It's like, yes, you're saving time, but you're generating revenue by increasing the lifetime value of your clients or by freeing up your team to do
Right.
more sales or whatever that might work,
Yeah.
look like. So it's an interesting way to do it. But for sure, when you're talking about like, okay, here's what my costs are. And if Brian can come in and help me look at that and evaluate where we're at and lower that, then, that's an immediate savings to me. And I can then sort of prioritize the other things that I need to
I
prioritize.
had
So
I had a
that's
customer, a
cool.
potential customer. I'll let you know if it works out. The other day,
Yeah.
who said, "Yeah, we're transitioning from SAP over to Salesforce, and we're also going to sunset our existing instance of Marketo and launch the new Marketo instance. Do you know how to set up marketing automation?" And I said, "Whoa, hold on a second. Marketing
There's a lot of things
automation is
going on
just
there.
not where you're at yet." And so,
Yeah.
I like the idea. I'm not telling a person how to do their marketing. I'm not going in and judging any of it. All I'm doing is drawing a line in the sand between enablement and empowerment. Because my
Mhm.
first question to them was, okay, well, why do you need Marketo at all if you have Salesforce? Why aren't you upgrading to Adobe if you're using Marketo? I need to understand all of these different things.
Yeah,
That's how
sure.
I operate. And no, I don't set up journeys. No, I don't do those things, but I do plan it all for you. So I'll take you from where
Hmm.
you're at today and get you to where you need to be tomorrow. And that actually is something that agencies like as well, because agencies want to be able to utilize certain tools and they might have a database that's completely unstructured. So bring me in,
Uh-huh.
make sense of everything, have a great one. I'm not a competitor in that sense.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because there's so many people in this business, as we know, and it's like an easy one, not an easy one. It's an easy one to sort of get into. It's a hard one to stay into,
Yeah,
which you have been doing for quite a while. And, we just celebrated 5 years at the agency that I founded. And it's, 5 years is it's a big
it
moment for
is.
people.
Yeah.
It's like you hit these sort of milestones along your career and your journey and you go, okay, wow, whew, 5 years, right? So when you're talking about this with folks and you're looking at, their work, I mean, are you looking at what they've done throughout history of their business? Or are you looking, how far back are you going into this? Because I think that, there's a
Well,
lot you could dig into. And of course, maybe you go, hey, well, let's just first prioritize your email addresses or your data or
right.
whatever. What does that look
So
like for you
so
when you're
that's where
first looking at
the
somebody?
prevention comes in versus solving. I
Right.
would say 95 to 98% of the time, I have absolutely no interest in what they did. It means nothing to me. What I'm trying
Yeah.
to do is understand what you're trying to do. And then
Uh-huh.
I dig into the systems and figure out whether or not you're equipped to do it. And if not,
Got it.
this is what's necessary to get you there. I think too many people focus on a lot of legacy stuff. I had one client once who had this two old instances of Salesforce and one new instance, and there was one data attribute out of the old instances that they wanted that they couldn't get. And I basically saved them a lot of money, made nothing for myself because I said to them, "Why do you need it?" Well,
Yeah.
we don't have it. Okay, you don't have it, but why do you need it? And I couldn't see a reason. There was no business rules. There was no marketing nothing. It was just this innate field that marked something about whether they purchased something like 5 years ago. Like, is it that
Hmm.
relevant? Because they could query it, they just couldn't append it, and lots of reasons why that I'll put another conversation
Yeah.
another
No,
day.
interesting. Okay. Cool.
So that's really how I kind of look at it, which is like, why do you need it? You don't forget it. Let's move on.
So I know obviously with the term, query versus append, I know what that means, but could you explain to everyone like when you're looking at data like that, how does that work? And also, tell me a little bit more like maybe that leads into what is your data hygiene strategy? You talk about that some, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure. So when I'm working on, I don't do much database querying. I don't need to. It's just not relevant to the work that I do because my job would be to ensure you can query it. Right.
Yeah, I got
So
it.
one of the biggest issues that I've seen with a lot of CRM platforms, and it just doesn't seem to be getting better for some reason, is that using older language that might resonate more. You have query and or count, and you have select, MySQL kind of language, right? Where you're saying,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
um, how many people are love monkeys and are aged 25 to 54, right? So I do
Yeah.
that query. I find out my answer. Okay, great. I have my answer. But now I want to send something to those people.
Yeah.
Now I have to do a count query. You can't. I have to go recreate it, and you can't always recreate it the
Hmm.
same exact way. So you wind up having to export complex segments and da 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 da. So somebody along the line came up with this fancy acronym CDP, and they are all pretending like they have any relevance to anything, or they matter at all. They don't, because they are not customer data platforms. They are customer query platforms because they are not databases. And I
Right.
think
They're
that,
just literally going out and pulling it for you.
right, which I have yet to find a single. That's not true. I have found clients where they have to do a lot of digital data visualization for their clients. Okay, fine. They're using it as a data
Hmm.
visualization tool. They still don't need it, but at least it gives you summaries. I have sat through so many seminars and presentations from CDPs, and at the end of it, I say to myself, I must be missing something. Like
Yeah.
I just don't get it. So and again, it comes down to that simple fact: what you need is a data scientist, and that's what you need.
Yes. Yes.
And if you say, "Well, we can't afford one," then you probably are trying to do too much, and you need to bring it back to
Hmm.
basics. There's a very black and white area to me there, right? You either
Okay.
do need to do that, or you simply don't have enough data. It's not necessary. So
Sure.
bring in the cleansing, right? When I'm going to cleanse the database, the very first thing I do is recency, right? Um, if you have emailed people or reached out to people in some way in the last 5 years, 1 year, and they have not responded, get rid of them. They are not
Mm.
only skewing your metrics and your reporting, so your denominator for all of your metrics, your opens divided by delivered, your clicks divided by delivered, da, 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 da,
You're
is
right.
completely skewed. So you have no idea how you're actually performing. You're hitting spam traps with email marketing. So that means spam traps being old email addresses that like Yahoo or AOL or any of these companies
Sure.
keep active and say, why are you emailing this person? They haven't used their account in 15 years.
Hmm.
It
Interesting.
gains nothing. Quality over quantity. You don't have any legitimate reason to send to people who are not engaging back.
Yeah.
Email is one of the most intimate forms of communication, right? Because we go to blogs, we go to websites, we receive email. Very different.
Hmm.
And we need to understand that it's very different. So when people are trying to do things like lookalike modeling and they're trying to find other
Yeah.
audiences, who are you doing that based off of? Your most engaged people?
Sure. Or are you just kind of grabbing your entire list of folks and putting them in this lookalike audience? And those people have changed over the years too, even
Yeah.
just their interests and wants and needs, you know?
I always say every marketing is life cycle marketing. Every form of marketing is, maybe not from the stereotypical mouse click activities that are associated with that by name, but nonetheless, everything's life cycle because I don't know about you, but I had an AOL address once. I don't have it anymore. I've changed my company, so if I have a B2B product, I got to be really careful with that, especially if I'm in banking or
Hmm.
insurance or stuff like that. Engagement is the only indicator of interest, period. You can't
Hmm.
go on opens, especially because of iOS rules updates with uh, 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 Droid Android coming, kind of a close behind. It
Sure.
You can't rely on simple metrics for email marketing specifically, and I don't know why you would bother trying.
We all know that the click is way more valuable, or, obviously a reply is going to be the best. But like if you're getting a click and that's a massive, massive thing. That means they opened your email. They took enough time to find wherever that link is. Hopefully, you placed it strategically in a
Sure.
smart spot, but more multiple times. But
You know what the
and then
number?
they hopefully load your page, and then you
Sure.
look at those things later. You go load page, whatever.
Because email cannot succeed in a silo. Email is nothing but a billboard. It serves no other purpose than that. Period. I mean, transactional email is a different thing. I'm not talking about those, right? Any sort of marketing
Yeah.
email. You have to the there are 2 or 3 fundamental flaws that I could say with a certain degree of certainty. Almost anybody watching or listening probably could say, "Ooh, yeah, we fall into at least one of them." Right? Um, the first is that they have different people doing their website than they have doing their email. Now that's okay in a day-to-day operational sense, but they must work together.
Mm.
One cannot succeed. Well, maybe the website can, but email cannot succeed without the website. So
Uh-huh.
consistency being, if I am clicking through on a 20% offer, I don't want to go to a website where a big interstitial comes up offering me 20% off. I've lost the feeling of being special because I've received this thing to my inbox. There has to
Mm.
be rules and conditions placed behind all of this to ensure that what the person's experience it is fluid and that they feel nothing will get higher engagement rates than when you make a person feel special. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you carry them over to the site and it's a disconnected experience. I don't get that. It makes no sense to me.
Right.
The other biggest probably indicator that I'm sure most people fall into is how many people out of 10 focus on engagement attrition as the number one most important metric, maybe after deliverability, right?
Mm.
Practically none. Practically none. So, how many people do you have? How many people do you lose per month to either engagement
Mm-hmm.
attrition or churn or abuse complaints, whatever? And from there, how many people do you gain? So,
Right.
golden rule of thumb. There's better math than I'm going to give you, but I'm going to give you safe math. Right?
Good.
You need to
Keep it safe.
zero out each month, but gain back what you lost, plus 20 to 25% new people. So now
Okay.
that opens up Pandora's box because now we're going to talk about the third bucket of what most marketers don't focus on: acquisition strategy.
Uh-huh.
This is my email list. I worked with one company who had over, I don't know if it was 10 or 15, doesn't matter, 10 or 15,000 people in their database. When I was done with it, they had 1,400.
Wow. Were a lot of those leads coming from, the founder, CEO, who sort of just was gathering lots of different lists, or was it just junk? Like,
That's what's
how did they
really
do that?
funny is that I don't. No one's doing it maliciously. Let me just say that. But
Yeah.
it takes me within 15 minutes to see uh, the method to their madness.
Uh-huh.
So 2018,
I bet it's interesting to
2019.
see what's going on under the
Oh,
hood
it is.
there.
And I
Yeah.
go, where is it? Where is it? I had a client the other day, a Mailchimp client, very small, and I'm looking at the data, and all of a sudden in February of 2022, 30 something thousand people were added to the database.
Mm-hmm.
That's not possible. I mean, it is if you're Disney, but
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're a small business, no, it's not possible. And so I said, well, where did you get that? Well, and I believe them. We had them for a long time in an Excel spreadsheet, but we never loaded them. Throw them out because you
Wow.
throw them out. There's no,
They don't know you anymore. They have no clue who you are. Yeah.
not only do they not know you, but they also um, don't care about you.
Yeah.
And I know that might sound harsh, but Bob Hoffman, one of my
Their
heroes.
problem has already been solved, probably, right? Like at this point, you're no longer going to. They're no longer needing your services or your
Right.
product or whatever you're offering. It's
Now,
far too long.
can you send one email and say, "Hey, would you like to hear from us?" Absolutely, but even incentivize it. But don't do this negative option nonsense where you're signed up automatically because our privacy policy said so. It doesn't make
Mm-hmm.
any sense. There is that company did more with 1,400 people because they were engaged
Mm-hmm.
people. Those other people had not opened, most of them ever.
Yeah. And that's just going to impact their deliverability. That's going to impact their scores and everything through, I mean, their email. So, when you're doing that, you're actually happy that you're reducing that list
Yeah,
down, people. It's not about having the numbers, although there is something to be said for Brian going, okay, there is a strategy to like maybe at least email them once, right? Let's see if they want to opt in. Do your best job of trying to get them to opt
sure.
in. But if that doesn't happen, it's time to let them go.
Let them
And
go.
I tell this to my clients, when I was working at the agency, it's, um, when they go, hey, you just wrote this email and I have this massive unsubscribe. Like, well, remember, you haven't emailed these people in 6 months or a year sometimes or more sometimes with these folks. And I go, we got to see if they're good. And ultimately, we're happy if they unsubscribe. That's a
Yep.
great thing. And probably, Brian, if we had somebody like you, we could bring you in first and say, help us figure out, help us validate these emails, help us run these through systems and processes to make sure that even before we send that email after 6 months or a year, that it's actually going to be as effective as possible
Yeah.
and it's not going to damage our reputation.
It's funny, but by trying to be simple, you make it more complicated when you say, I don't want to go through the data cleansing and the removing. Okay. You're making it much
Yeah.
harder for yourself. And there's no logic behind it. There just isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that what I hear most often is, yeah, but my CEO won't let me do that. Okay, let me speak with them. And what
Yeah.
I do in those cases is I create two different segments. I said, I'm going to send the same email to this group and this group. No funny
Sure.
business,
Sure.
simply based on last engagement date. And we're going to see what happens. And when you put data in front of a CEO, it tends to work better. Nice chart, use
Yeah.
colors and stuff like that. But when you put that in front of them and say, this did nothing for you but cost you money. I know email's
Mm-hmm.
cheap, but still, you spent $80 on this. It didn't do anything for you, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
I
and even
once,
more, sorry.
no, I was going to say, a really quick anecdote. I once won a beer at somebody in Boston. I said, I bet I could triple your open rate in 1 hour. He's like, no way. I was like, no, I bet I can. He's like, all right, I bet you a beer. I was like, all right, bet me a beer. And I removed the non-opener. Suddenly the denominator changed and the percentage of open skyrocketed like 60,
Uh-huh.
70%. And it was an
Mm-hmm.
exaggeration to prove a point.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
You want
Because
accurate
obviously you wouldn't want to
metrics.
necessarily remove all of your, the people that aren't opening your emails necessarily, because maybe they will, but there's got to be a time when you can say, okay, this person hasn't opened an email in X number of months, days, years,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. I need to remove them.
And again, you
Um,
can't do it based on open. A lot of people say, if they've opened one of my last 3 emails. No,
that's
you
right. You're talking about
can't
engagement
do
score.
that because of the
Hmm.
privacy issues with device, which to me is a point of contention. If I ever spoke with someone at Apple or, Droid, Android, I keep calling it Droid for some reason. I'm old, I guess.
Yeah,
Android.
I'm the same. That's fine.
I
I didn't even notice
I
it.
yeah, I would say to them, like, I understand from a privacy perspective, but there's other there needs to be some sort of an indicator so we could be fair to you. You don't want us sending to people who aren't engaged, yet you're trying to not make it possible to determine that. And
Right.
if you do enough research, you know that a lot of people don't click through, but they do read, especially in media. Like Axios, I don't know their data, but I'm saying if I had to guess,
Yeah.
I would say Axios does not have dramatically high click rates, and they don't care because the person's reading the Smart Brevity article in the email. That's the end of it.
Interesting. It's interesting. I mean, I love those 3 points. I think that's if you are a business owner and you're looking at your emails and you're trying to consider what you need to do here, maybe you weren't even thinking about it and this is sparking some interest. Like go back and look at those 3 points because that's a really good hits there. And especially I think the idea of saying, okay, why are we still spending time and energy and money on emailing folks who are not engaging with us, who are not
Mm-hmm.
clicking or reading or doing anything like that? Now are there ways for us to find out how far someone has read in an email? Are there new tools that will show you any of those types of things? Because
Yeah.
there are some crazy tools coming out. I feel like every day I'm sort of having trouble even keeping up with them. Like for one, there was Clearbit. They were just bought, I think, by HubSpot,
They
which is
were.
crazy. Another one's called Seamless.ai. And I don't know, there's just so many out there. And I would imagine in some ways, this is like, it's a new frontier of how do you help coach people like me and others who go, wow, this is cool. I can go find someone's email address, their LinkedIn, their this, that, and the other. But I then have to cold email them, right?
Mhm.
And I have to have a system like Hunter or something else to be able to automate that sort of system. That's got to bring up some issues, right? And some difficulties maybe, or like, how do we navigate those things?
So it's an interesting question because it speaks very much. I'm going to look the name of something here. Okay, so if you and your listeners don't know Stripo, Stripo, look it up.
Okay, I'm gonna look
Stripo
it up right now.
is the most important company in email marketing, period. Based out of Ukraine.
Wow.
Dimitri is a genius. If you don't subscribe to Stripo, subscribe to their blog. Because if you
Okay.
want to know the latest technology, but also its limitations, you want to get that information from there. So if I look at like technology like AMP and I look at all this different stuff, all of it comes back to that fundamental question we started our conversation with, right? Which is, I'm first going to prevent problems.
Mm-hmm.
Before you worry about whether or not you want to use a Clearbit or any system like that, let's first determine that you can use a system like Clearbit, both operationally. Do your people know how to use it? Do you have the IT resources to manage and optimize it over time? But also, from a cost perspective, is the ROI potential there? Because great, I got 5 leads. Great, I converted 2 of them, but I didn't actually net out at a positive ROI. So what was the point in any of it?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of math is important to me. I always advise people you need to make sure that what you're thinking about doing is feasible based on your business as it exists, right? So most SMBs do not need services like that. They just don't. I think what's happened is people have forgotten how to make a phone call or cold reach. Now, I don't like cold reach out.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it. I'm much bigger into introductions, but
Sure.
I think that it's to some degree it's a necessary evil, but not via email. Okay,
Yeah.
not via email. If a person hasn't told you they want to hear from you, don't write to them.
This has got to be a hard one, Brian, because there's so many of us out there who go, well, then how are we going to reach out to them? I mean, there's obviously dozens of different ways to do it, but this is the way that we're used to.
Because
This
it's
is the way.
it's the old world's methodologies being applied to an online world, right? It just is.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the old world, we called everybody. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Oh man, I used to make 50 calls a
oh
day
yeah,
or more, sometimes 100 calls. Yeah, I mean and I don't think people have that sales experience anymore. But I always try to, liken it back to when I'm looking at digital marketing strategies. I go, okay, look, you can't just have one cold outreach that's going to be effective. You have to have 7 or 8. And now with digital, it's more like 10, 15,
right,
like that you have to touch those people before they will convert into a customer.
sure.
I can remember calling doctors and calling them over and over and over. And finally on the 7th or 8th call, them going, yeah, I'll have lunch with you.
Yeah.
Like, okay, thank God.
But
Like, and
yeah,
yeah,
it's crazy. But the funny thing about that is, well, first of all, again, I said email is the most intimate form of communication. It is,
mhm,
but it also, when it was named email, we all have this association with legacy inboxes, right? We all think of Gmail and Yahoo and all
yeah,
those different things, but email simply means electronic mail. It does not mean Yahoo or Gmail. So
mhm,
everything from LinkedIn to Instagram and everything in between, to me, those are all inboxes. Those are all email. I don't consider them any different. I don't consider SMS any different. It is all email.
Interesting.
Maybe
Okay, I was going to ask you about SMS, what you thought about, because that seems more intimate to me typically. But
it can be. So, am I saying never email people? No, but
yeah, no,
there's two or three things to think about. So you have companies like Funnel and Segment and all these other companies that offer you the sky and the moon. But the problem is that people are not setting these up optimally. They're not
hmm,
optimizing their journeys or their workflows. And if they're trying to, they're usually doing so very inefficiently with respect to their time. Right. So what's happening is these people are spending so much of their time and effort on trying to set up funnels, and my biggest pet peeve is with that company Canva. I've never seen a company more full of crap in my entire career. Never,
really.
never. They annoy the heck out of me.
Uh,
And also some of the,
explain why.
because it's not great. You've made it simple for me to do a layout. It doesn't make me a better copywriter. It doesn't make me a better UI person. It doesn't help
Yeah,
me
yeah,
with the
yeah.
fact that you have a website address on there that links you to a site that is not optimized for anything. It is a complete farce. I wouldn't spend five
Sure,
dollars
sure.
on that system.
What do you mean? You mean I can't be an ad buyer that's bought millions of dollars of ads and knows how to do that?
It,
No, no, you can't. But the funny thing is, people think, oh, well, I have Canva. I'll go make a $5 design with my
sure.
intern instead of going to a
All right.
designer or a copywriter or a content person who knows what
Oh,
they're
oh, and
doing and has made
by
money.
the way, small businesses from a deli to a doctor's office will say, "Oh yeah, but it's great for the flow." Get yourself a PowerPoint template. You're making too much of it. Pay
Yeah,
for the thing
yeah,
once and update it with ease and print the thing out.
yeah.
It's like people are overcomplicating things, because it's not trendy to use PowerPoint. Oh, come on. It's 1,000 times more capable than Canva could ever dream to be. And now they have these new things where they go, oh, no, my AI will write my headline, my AI. You have to know how AI works. You can't
Mm-hmm,
just,
mm-hmm.
you need to understand natural language processing, NLP. You have to know how to formulate a prompt. It is on its own a science. I've talked to a lot of teachers about this, where I say, you guys are missing the boat on an opportunity. Rather than being worried
Sure.
about
Educate.
plagiarism, educate them on how to write that, because it's the
Yeah.
future.
Well, it's funny you say that because I mean, I think when we're talking about people come up to me and go, "Hey, should my kid go to get a degree in marketing?" Like, no,
No,
get on YouTube and freaking learn it in 6 months. You're done.
my degree was
Like,
in
I
music.
mean, yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Communication. Still, it's not like applicable. It doesn't make sense to waste the time and the money to go do that. And it's the same thing, with our school system too. It's like, okay, what I learned in college was how to avoid taking not avoid taking the test, but how to sort of get the information I needed to take the test and be done with it and lose that information. I didn't remember it, but I learned how to work the system. I learned how to create things. I think in some ways that's afforded me, progress in my business, that you look at an obstacle and you go, this is the obstacle. I'm going to figure out a way to work around it. And I think that's a really great thing and a great skill for entrepreneurs to have. But we're not teaching how to do the things that we could be doing, since we should be realizing that this is what kids are doing, right?
There's
Like,
one,
let's teach them applicable things like development or other
but
things
there's
today.
one more
So,
step.
not to get off
No, 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 no,
topic,
not
but
at all, because it's very much on topic, because it speaks to people look at these tools as a solution
mm-hmm,
without yet understanding what problem they have. I always have this same critique of FAQs, right? I don't like FAQs because they presume you know the question you need to ask. Think
mm-hmm,
about that, right? Frequently asked questions. Yes, but if I don't know what to ask, right? So this idea of critical thinking is, to me, I see it in educational systems, but not the prominence that I feel it should have. It's
mm-hmm.
everything, because you need to know how to choose things, not just think, oh, this website says it could do all these different things. Let me sign up for it. And it's like, you know, just because something can do something doesn't mean you're going to know how to get it to do it.
And that would be, it's an interesting way to look at maybe FAQs instead of saying, hey, here's the FAQ. Maybe it's, you're using something like a chat GPT or a tool with one of these chat plugins where you can sort of train the model and give it responses, and maybe then ultimately have a human powered person behind it a couple steps, but where someone can say, okay, just go to the FAQ page. It would be cool. Somebody out there do this. Go to the FAQ page and create just a little field that
Right.
says, what's your question?
So if
And
you're
somebody just types it in and let the bot pull up the right stuff for
right,
you. You know,
but let's
some people do it.
look at SMBs. Say, yeah, it's a great idea. Let me go do that. They're not going to know how. They're not going to have the resources to do it. So it comes to me again. Comes back to, are you solving a problem or preventing one? Right. So what I actually say, yes, I 100% agree with you. That's exactly where I believe we're going, and we should be going. And when there is something that's, it's like these chat bots. All these SMBs are jumping on the chat bot bandwagon, but it's of no benefit to them. They don't have any data. So when a
Mm-hmm.
person puts it in, what article is it linking through to? There's no data. So it's a complete waste of money and time. So what I like to say is, okay, instead of an FAQ, use filtering, because
Mm-hmm.
filters can help you in a certain sense. Using a simple example, how big is your monitor, right? Well, if my monitor is 20 inches, which I can measure with a tape if I'm not sure how, then I'm going to remove the ones that aren't relevant. Okay, now I have something relevant, more relevant. Okay, what's the
Mm-hmm.
problem? Most common problems, red line, da 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 da. Right. So I'm using a kind of weird example to stress the point, but help a person
Yeah.
by holding their hand, making them feel special. And it doesn't
Uh,
have to be expensive or complicated. It just doesn't. You
yep.
know what people struggle with most.
I think that most people take these things and they do overcomplicate them, like you said. And it's especially that concept of the cobbler making his shoes, right? Like it's that idea that for some reason, when you're looking at your own content and you're looking at your own business, it's very hard to plan that marketing strategy or to implement it. Or maybe you make shortcuts or you do things that you shouldn't do, you shouldn't do, but you're doing it because I'm the business owner. I can get away with kind of making these sort of shortcuts. And ultimately, you would never recommend that if you were an agency owner to some other client.
Right.
And you would never do that for that other client because you would be doing poor work for them. But for whatever reason, when it comes to us, we look at it and we go, okay, well, we're just gonna move
Yeah.
forward with
It's
this,
funny.
especially when you're talking about like a small agency,
Yeah.
somebody who's getting started, or you're a small business out there. We have agencies and small businesses that use our product, but and all sorts of sizes. But like what? So this is really interesting. We normally will go into like a news article around the 30-minute mark and sort of talk some stuff. We're going to look at some Google AI stuff, but I think really what I'd rather do is focus more in on this email stuff again, because as an agency owner and as someone who deals with clients every day, well, I used to, I've seen this constantly, constantly, constantly. It's probably the biggest battle that I have with people. And it's the idea that I'm going to help you as a marketer generate emails that are high quality, that are not going to be necessarily the cheapest that you can get. Yeah, could I go get you 5-cent emails? Probably, running some Facebook ads with some really, clickbaity stuff. Yeah, sure. But are those going to be high quality people that you're going to email and get good results from? No. So what we do is we spend a little bit more money and we make sure that we're targeting in on people, even if it's a couple bucks or more per email address, $5, $10 per email address. It doesn't matter. It depends on the industry, but what is the end result from that? Now, some people go, okay, the end result needs to be immediate. And I totally get that. But we were just talking about sales and how it used to take 7 to 10 touches. Now it probably takes 10 to 20 touches for someone. What are we supposed to do sort of in those situations? Like
Sure.
how do we handle that?
Well, first,
Does that make
it
sense?
does. First, we need to have a conversation around the culture behind email marketing, right? It's known to be cheap, quick, fast. Cheap it is. The rest of it's not true, right? Not if you want it to work anyway. Anybody can send an email. It's easy to send an email. Send an email. Um, but if you want it to work, again, going back to remembering it can't succeed in a silo, and it also
Mm-hmm.
can't come first, ever. So if you were to lay down a journey or some sort of automation flow or whatever you want to call it, Um, I am against buying leads for the sole
Mm-hmm.
purpose of emailing them. There's no point in it. It is just not the way to do it. If you're
And it's so
B2B,
expensive.
it's so
So
expensive.
expensive these days. Rent a list, buy a list. It's very expensive.
There's no rationale to it. What I much prefer is something that it's not done enough, which is co-reg. Find somebody who complements your business, and when a person registers for them, they have the opportunity register with our partner or whatever. Partner messaging, a social media post that says, "Hey, our partners at X are running a special. Don't miss that opportunity." Right? Like, there are a lot of ways that you can not have to put email first. People put email first because it seems like low hanging fruit, like the simplest thing to do. It isn't. It
Mm-hmm.
isn't. And
Yeah, and it takes time.
it takes time. And one of the things I said before holds true, which is, okay, so let's say you do get a sale or two. Where's the ROI calculation, right? Show me that was worth doing. Not based on the fact you got two sales, but on the fact that you netted out ahead. And I would probably argue you will never see that. I mean, I don't believe there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of absolutes in this world. I believe that's one. If you just email out to a whole bunch of people, you are not going to make a positive ROI. It's just, I would challenge that. And if someone said they did it, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, show me the math, because something's wrong.
Because when you're talking about that, you're saying, okay, you are going to be touching, reaching out to these people, whether it be on LinkedIn and as a touch point, or, Instagram, or maybe you're, texting them, I guess, or something like that, sort of in addition to an email potentially. Is that
Yeah, that's
right?
right. And because it can't succeed in a silo. But
Mm-hmm.
on that journey, an email cannot be first or should not be first.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
Mm-hmm.
never. There's not a single reason why. The only time where it's acceptable, and I would argue it's not the first touch, would be if a person downloads a white paper or submits a form. But I would argue, by nature of them going to the website, that was first. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so maybe they started at Google, right? So
Yeah, so there were multiple places where you could have hit them with a display ad, you could have hit them with a search
yeah,
ad, or something like that.
I hate when people call email marketing an inbound marketing tool. It is not inbound marketing because I send it. It is outbound marketing. There's nothing inbound
Exactly.
about it.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous claim. Uh, and then the other part with the emailing, probably my most important secret sauce. Um, there's two or three components. Two or three components to everything, right? The first is email design is not mobile first, because mobile first, or essentially, single column. Not the reason that doesn't make any sense is I can't go from a single column to two columns, but I
Mm-hmm.
can go from two columns to one column.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a desktop first
Right.
design always. That's the
Sure.
number one rule. The number two rule is use what I call an abandon clause. If I'm not particularly interested in the content, include a nav bar so they might be interested in something else, right? Which is really the precipice for the most important two questions you must answer every time you're about to send an email. If you can't answer both, not one, but both of these, don't send an email. And I actually, when I manage email marketing programs, it's a rule of mine. When there's a setup form, answer these two questions. Why are you sending the email? And why should the recipient care? Now,
Mm-hmm.
not why am I sending the email because it's cheap or it's fast or because we send emails. No, why are you sending an email? Why an email? Why not throwing papers out of an airplane or doing a TV spot? Why email? And why should the recipient care? And if you don't know that, don't send an email, because what you're ultimately doing is hurting yourself.
I think those are some great questions that everyone should be asking when you're sending any kind of sales or customer related email. Those are perfect for that. I just think that so many of us do sort of quickly go through the idea of like, well, I know what I'm trying to get out of this email, And so therefore, here's how I'm going to word it and look at it. And it's, again, it's sort of that cobbler and shoe sort of situation. You got to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah,
You
you
have
don't
to sort of
matter.
be able to pull yourself out. Yep. And go, okay, here are the attributes of these people. If I was going to go build a marketing campaign, how am I going to design this ad creative to meet those people, right? If I'm try to sell something to you, Brian, I'm not going to go create something with a bunch of pink. I'm not going to go create probably. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to go create something for a product that's not of your interest.
Right.
I'm going to go maybe create something with some music
Right.
or some musical instruments or something that might interest you. Same thing with this email. Let's make sure we're looking at it from a perspective of, how do I reach those people in this
Right.
content that's going to make sense for them,
Emails are
and not just
billboards. You want to answer those two questions? Close your eyes, picture yourself going up the road, and you're going to pass a billboard at 65 miles an hour because we always drive the speed limit. And what does it say? It doesn't say the point of the email is to get you to the site, right? The point of the subject line is to get you to the email. Most successful subject line I ever used was something I stole from a bank I once saw that used it not knowingly as the most brilliant headline on a flyer I ever saw, but it was ask me who Kevin is. Ask me who Kevin is. So it was a different name, but ask me who Bubba is, right? By far, I've never come close to having open rates that high again, because my
Wow.
goal was to get you to open the email, right? And now that I open the email, I'm going to tell you who the person is, but I'm also going to tell you why you should care and why it matters. Click through to
Yeah.
move to the next step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you're looking at email and you're going, okay, maybe they reached out to our website first, right? There are tools now, cool ones like Clearbit we talked about earlier, and others that will actually sort of help to match that data to an actual human being at a company with real-time data. That to me seems like a great way to sort of merge what you're talking about, which is, hey, they have already taken an action. They have already engaged with us by visiting our website. Now we can reach out to them in a sort of appropriate way. I mean, to me, it sort of bridges the gap there between someone who's going to be real salesy and reach out to every cold outreach possible with a real salesy outreach versus someone who goes, hey, I just saw that you were on my website and you bailed after 30
Sure.
seconds. What can we do to bring you back? Or what can we do to whatever, right? Like doing something that's creative
Sure.
and engaging.
But
That seems like a really great strategy. Are you working on that at all, or have you
so
seen that to be
there's a caveat to it, right?
okay?
If I had a soundproof music studio after finishing my basement and had drum set and a 100-channel soundboard and incredible amplification and monitoring and all this different, that'd be great too. If you can't afford it, don't do it. It's not an absolute
Mm-hmm.
be all end all thing, but if you do it and you do it wrong, it's nothing but cost behind that. And if you can't optimize it over time, don't do it. Yes, it's great.
Yeah.
In a B2B framework, a tool like Clearbit can be beneficial. But I also don't think it's a coincidence that you never see ROI reports from any of these. They're the first one to show you a PowerPoint and all the wonderful things they did for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But you ask them for, show me ROI. Show me your system was worth it.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of solving a problem because you're getting more relevant information on a person. Where I would argue, okay, yeah, but if you engaged with that person in a smart and effective way, you would get that information anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but they would have given it to you, zero party data. And now I could use that to send them
Sure.
messages, and they're not wondering how they know I have an interest in golf.
Uh-huh. Yep.
But you see, that's going to a level companies don't want to go to. They just want to sign up a Clearbit. They just want to sign up. And it has its purpose, it has its place, but it's not for everyone.
And again, you have to use it in the right strategy. You can't just go, I'm going to put Clearbit on it and somehow that's going to connect the dots.
Right.
Like, make those emails crafted in a way where we go, hey, what did we do wrong? Or something interesting in the subject. So they go, well, you didn't do anything wrong. My dog started barking and I had to go outside. And actually, now that they emailed me, I do want to come back. Like, that's an
Right.
interesting strategy to say, okay, cool. Like, that's a great subject line. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think? Is that a good subject line?
Well, like you,
What did we do wrong? And then like question mark or something.
the problem with it to me is that it focuses on me, not on the recipient.
Uh huh.
You know, I would position
So
it
we could
more.
change
Yeah, I
it.
would position it more like, did you get what you needed?
Uh huh.
I feel like I left you hanging.
Left. Yeah.
So I'm saying it's just different. It's more.
Again, it goes back to those two questions that you said. So I could pose those to myself and go, okay, what am I getting? What am I providing to these
Yeah.
people? And the value there. Okay, so that's good. That's good. Because I think right now we're in this time where everyone is jumping on the bandwagon of all these AI tools and of all these really, I mean,
You
they're going to
don't
be
need them.
powerful. They are powerful, but you're going to be wasting a lot of time. You're wasting a lot of energy, and you're going to ultimately be. It's going to change in 6 months or a year, and let's build the strategies, build the foundation that you
Let
need to
me
build,
let me
which
give
I
you a
think you're
great
talking about.
analogy. It's the perfect analogy I've used all the time. Right? If you pay $50,000 to redo your kitchen, but have never once cooked in your kitchen before doing it, are you really telling me you're going to start cooking every night? So
Mm-hmm.
all of this great technology might be there, but you're not even using more than 20% of the tools, according to Gartner, in the systems you have. So what are you doing? You know,
Yeah.
and why are you complicating it? You know, like people say, I want to do a journey. I ask them why. They never know.
Well, and I think that's why, what you're doing is you're helping people come in, you're helping them understand their data, organize their data, cleanse their data, and then you're talking about, okay, now how do we build sort of a strategy moving forward for you? And that way you can get them going in the right direction, building
Mm-hmm.
a solid foundation.
Getting tagging in
I've been
place, getting
talking.
tokens in place, getting all of that stuff in place that should not be your problem, but does need to be done correctly.
And are you working with, I mean, I know you're working with people too on like the forms and things like that as well. I've seen, I know with our company, there's lots of bots that are out there that are spamming websites with email addresses and stuff. I mean, do you suggest every business have a honeypot or have some sort of verification on their form fields? What does that look like for you?
I think again, it does come down to cost because I think if you don't have the money
Yeah.
to implement and manage what I'm about to talk about, I think that using reCAPTCHA 3, it's just, I have to use it. I can't afford the alternative, period.
Sure.
That's it,
Sure.
right? The alternative to me, though, is to integrate with one of a million companies. I like a company called ImpressionWise. There are several like that, that you integrate them via API into your form. So as you enter the
Okay.
email address, it will come back more than just syntax. In other words, you forgot the add or you put a comma instead of a period. It's actually going to, in real time, determine whether it's a known spam trap, whether it's a park domain, whether it's this, whether it's that. And it's going to come back and not let you submit the form because it's going to say that doesn't seem to be a correct one, right? So it tries a second time, tries a third time. Doesn't work. Now reCAPTCHA shows. See, so the person who had a valid one never even
Yeah.
saw reCAPTCHA,
That's cool. I like that.
right?
Keeping it simple, keeping it straightforward for anybody who is a legit person to come on, put in their email address, and be done.
Right.
Versus, because dude, totally got into forums where I'm like, oh, this
And there are business rules you
thing
could
I gotta
associate
look into.
with it too, where if it comes back and it's known as a valid email address, you leave them alone. But if the response
Yeah.
back from the data from like an ImpressionWise is what's called catch-all, meaning you can't tell if it's a real one or not, then you do a double opt-in. But you put the business condition in, right? And
Right.
you say that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because if a person wants to hear from you, they will click on the double opt-in. If it's not important enough to them, then you probably shouldn't be sending them emails. Not emails.
Yeah. There's other ways to sort of warm them up there. Well, I think that's great. I mean, Brian, this has been a very insightful conversation.
Thank you.
Seriously, super excited, and definitely think that we're gonna have to have you back
I
on.
would love it.
And I think Yeah, and I think truthfully, this is like, if you're listening out there, this is the reason that you hire people who are good at what they do. This is the reason that people come to hire you as an agency owner, as a digital marketing agency or an internal marketing team where you're working for stakeholders. You've been hired for a reason. You hire people like Brian for a reason, because he has proven in this 56 minutes of our conversation that there are things out there that I, as an experienced digital marketer, not aware of. It's because it's not my field. I don't do this every
Exactly.
day. Brian does this every day. So I'm going to suggest that if you're a business and you can afford someone like Brian, I'm sure it's not cheap, but when you can afford and you can make that investment, you need to find someone like Brian. And Brian has it's going to be Labrador Connect. What is it? It's the
LabradorConnect.com. Yep.
LabradorConnect.com. So be looking there, and I'm sure he'll have an email form probably the
See, I'm
sign
going
up
to
page
use
or the sign up
reCAPTCHA
page.
because I can't afford the
Yeah,
bigger, that's what it
and
is.
that's where you're at,
Yeah,
right? And at least you're doing that thing that you need to be
that's
doing. And
right.
rather than going, I wasn't even aware that all of these are bots, which I think a lot of business owners aren't. They go, oh wow, I got all these emails, this is awesome. Well, start looking at them. You're probably going to see some weird things, and you're sort to see some things, and some of them are competitors. I think some of them are just bots, and there's other tools out there that are trying to scrape your emails and your data and other things from you. So you really do have to have something like a honeypot, but probably even easier than a honeypot, if you can afford it, is Impression Wise or one of these other tools that Brian's mentioned.
Quality over
Before we
quantity.
go, Brian, because this has been a great conversation, I want to see, do you want to wrap it up with anything that you would like to talk about in terms of just final thoughts here for us? And uh, again, just appreciate your time.
There are too many bandwagons out there. Thank you so much for having me on here to be able to say out loud. Get off the bandwagons and focus on data. Not even what I'm saying. Look at the data. There is literally only one truly objective source in this world, and it's data. Right? So people
Mm,
say I have an objective opinion. No, you don't, because an opinion by its nature cannot be objective. That's why it's an opinion. So,
yeah,
the experience level is what's going to put you in the right direction. But all these different things you're spending money on, all these different things that seem great, it's usually not as black and white as it seems. And I'd be happy to talk with anybody to give them some quick guidance, no cost, just to say to them,
sweet.
we should dig into this deeper.
Okay, cool. So if you heard Brian on this conversation and you want to reach out to him, just let him know you heard him here, and Brian's going to give you a free consultation of sorts, whatever that looks like
Sure.
for his business. And would love to have you back on, Brian. Well, Brian,
Anytime.
thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you,
Uh,
Preston. Pleasure.
all righty, have a great one.
Take care, man. Be well.